Like, we have our ideas that are our babies, and we're very protective of them. You have to be willing to give up on some of those and move on.
You deal with the pain early on, which is this really isn't going to be a viable product.
This accumulative building of knowledge across multiple disciplines.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the BYU Tech Transfer Podcast. Today we have Jeremy Newns with us. Jeremy Newns has a background in product design, product development. And Jeremy, why don't you give us a little bit of your history and introduce yourself a little bit if you don't mind.
As far as quick introduction, most recently I just spent the last 10 years as the Director of Product Development R&D at KT Health, otherwise known as KT Tape.
Yes, yeah.
Most people know it as that. And wrapped that up last May. And before that, I also did some product development for a startup in the nail art business.
Okay.
Prior to that, 15 years in the publishing business. Going even further back, printing business, and did some teaching along the way in a couple different art and visual communication programs at Provo College and UVU,
Very
graphic
nice.
design.
Yeah.
So, been doing it for a while. Product development has something that's evolved specifically over the last 15 years.
Yeah.
And kind of been a culmination of lots of other things kind of leading up to it.
Right. Yeah. And did you have a favorite part of your career, a favorite job that you had or industry that you worked in? I mean, I'm sure you learned from each one of those different phases, but anything that stands out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. There are very kind of compartmentalized parts of my career that have taught me different things. Back in 2011, I joined a startup.
Okay.
And the mission there was basically just build it.
Yeah.
Everything on the operations side. So it was operations, the product development, the sourcing, the manufacturing, the order fulfillment, the team building. I mean, it was literally like build the company.
Yeah, ground up.
That was a fantastic experience. It gave me the opportunity to leverage a lot of the things I knew and then learn a lot of other things that then I've since used to build my career further from there.
Yeah. No, I feel like the experience that you get from doing a startup is unlike anything else, right? Because when you come in to an established company with an established role, it's pretty narrow what your focus is, or it tends to be, right?
Yeah.
Whereas when you come in and they're like, hey, we maybe have a product or we have a good idea and we need to build everything else around it. At least for myself, I find myself putting on lots of different hats, trying to figure things out and relying on past experiences. Did you find your situation similar to that? Very
similar. I wore many hats. It was literally like launching a plane and building it as it's flying. That's an analogy a lot of people use.
I love that analogy.
That turned into a rocket ship. The growth was phenomenal. It was basically just trying to hang on and try to steer it and guide it.
Yeah.
I was working 60 plus hours a week. If you ask my wife, she'll swear to you it was 70 or more, right?
Right.
And again, just so many hats. And as the company grew and we kind of started to compartmentalize, we could hire other people to take some of those specialties. I would kind of take some of those hats off. Mm-hmm. And it got to a point in about 3 years where I just kind of felt like, hey, you know what? My job here is done. Yeah. Like things are in good hands.
And we've built what we needed to build, and now we're going to hand it off and look at some other things.
But I mean, it was just like, it's the Wild West if you've ever been in that startup world. I mean, there's very few rules. It's whatever you have to do to get things done.
Yes.
And nothing is beneath you. You can't have that mindset of like, I'm too senior for this or I'm too whatever. I mean,
this is somebody else's job because sometimes there is nobody else.
Everything is your job,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
And so you have to have that mindset. And if you don't have those people on your team, you might have the wrong people.
Yes,
frankly.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think it's funny in entrepreneurship, you talked about what I would define as maybe the problems of scaling, right? Where you have growth and you have people who are interested in the product. You have that good product market fit. And so your problems, you're still problem solving, but it's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum that a lot of entrepreneurs deal with, especially early on, which is getting anybody to care about the project that they're working on at all. Did you ever have any of those experiences in your career where you were representing something or working on a project and it was just really hard to get traction? Or do you feel like you've had some pretty good luck with, pretty good traction with most of your products and ideas?
Two kind of scenarios come to mind. Yeah. One is like internally, right? You could be working for a product brand, mm-hmm. and you are trying to be very entrepreneurial, right? With your thinking, right? Yes. Where you're saying, hey, I've got this great idea. It could be a new product or a product renovation. And you have to pitch that internally to your own team, right? To get some traction on that.
You have to get those internal stakeholders.
The internal stakeholders are saying, hey, this is why I think we should lean into this. And there's sometimes headwinds there because, it might not be the right time or you might not have the budget or things. And then the other scenario that comes to mind is even if you're an established brand, like KT Tape was basically a global brand.
Right.
It sometimes is hard to have manufacturers take you seriously because they don't understand the opportunity.
Right.
So you go to try to source something and say, hey, we want to make this with you. And they kind of don't take you seriously. They don't understand who you are or what your volumes could be over, year 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right.
And so you're kind of saying, it's kind of discouraging because you're like, wait, we want to give you business.
Yes.
It could be a lot of business. But they kind of brush you aside because maybe in their world, you're still a small fish.
Right.
Even though in your world, you're the biggest fish.
Yes.
Right. And so sometimes there's those disconnects.
Yeah, and that can be incredibly frustrating, especially when you know that you have good product market fit, right? And you're like, hey, this is going to be a big thing. We just need somebody to take us serious enough to be willing to give us the time of day to be able to figure out how we're going to actually manufacture
And we know we're going to put marketing against it. And we know what our plan is, but they just say, oh, you only want X amount of units for the first year.
Right.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's so interesting and such I think a good perspective for people to hear, because sometimes they think all they need is the name behind it and then their idea will be successful. And that's not necessarily true.
No, not at all.
Right.
And I think I have learned that, and on certain teams we've learned that. I'm not going to say the hard way, but we've just learned that sometimes having a brand name is not enough.
Right. Yeah. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe stepping back just a little bit, what got you interested in product design, product development? It sounds like you've done lots of different things, but most recently product development.
Yeah.
What got you started on that path?
I would say it just goes back to a curiosity. I'm going to go back to my early childhood when I've just been making and creating things since I was a kid. It's just a deep curiosity of how things work. Not just how they work, but what are they made of? How is it put together? You know what I mean? I was that kid. Anytime a household appliance, a hairdryer, or toaster was thrown away, I'd pull it out, take it in the garage, and I'd literally deconstruct it.
Right.
Because I was curious to why does this work? How does it work? How is it put together? And that just continued to snowball. Junior high, I was introduced to different shop classes. High school, I took a graphic arts class, and all these are all creative processes. It's all starting off with nothing or just bare materials and ending up with something that you've built with your hands.
Yeah. No, it's funny. I was listening to somebody the other day and they called it the knack, right?
Okay.
They said you were either the kid who tore apart the toaster or you weren't.
Yeah.
Right? And there's no way to teach or encourage people to do that. It's you either were really interested in things and how they worked and those types of shop, those types of opportunities, or you just weren't. And I think it's an interesting perspective. I might push back a little bit. I think people can be, herded in that direction.
Sure.
But I think the insight is definitely true, right? A lot of us just were born and grew up and we just naturally had that inclination to how does this work, trying to figure it out and being interested in not just the finished product, but the components and how it got there.
Right. No, I absolutely agree with that. There's just something inside of you that you have to, it's an itch you have to scratch of making and creating and building and understanding.
Yeah.
When I moved to Utah in '93, my first job was with a printing company, just a sheet-fed print shop, and I learned everything about the printing business: paper, bindery, everything.
Yeah.
And then while I was doing that, I went and got an associates of graphic design, which then led me into a position with a publishing company, doing a lot of Adobe Illustrator work.
Okay, nice.
Illustrating a lot of taking raster stuff and then illustrating it into vector.
Okay.
And then a position came open there for print production. And I was the only person internally in this company of 200 people that had any experience with print production. So I moved into that. And so I worked there for 15 and a half years, and everything I moved into was a progression of things I'd already learned. And that's not necessarily product development, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
Right. And then with the nail art startup, right, the key reasons I was hired is because I had operations experience. I had experience with creative, like using Adobe Illustrator, because that was our file type.
Right.
And I had experience with printing.
Okay.
So like the 3 core things they needed,
hit the trifecta.
I checked those boxes. And so then that's my first introduction to like a company that made physical consumer goods.
Okay.
Right. And then that's when I noticed, as we developed products, that all of my other experience, because every time you develop a product, at least my experience, I also have to develop the packaging. They're hand in glove.
Yeah.
Some bigger companies, you have a product team, and then you might have a packaging engineering team. They might be separate. I've always been that standalone, that single guy that did both.
Yeah. And honestly, it's something that most people and entrepreneurs don't think about, is the packaging that goes into the finished product.
Oh, it's hugely important, and it's
hugely important.
To your point, it's often overlooked, but it has to be developed in conjunction with the product.
Yes.
For reasons I might not even have time to go into. So as I started working for a company that had physical consumer goods, I found myself heavily relying on the print production, the graphic design, things I had learned over the years about materials.
Right.
You know what I mean? Dye lines for packaging. Like all kinds of things started to coalesce around this thing called product development. You know, that it was very successful there. Developed a lot of different products, and sometimes product, when we say develop, it might be like, hey, we need this product, let's find someone who co-manufactures it,
right,
white labels it.
Yes. Yeah.
But you still have to learn to speak the language. It could be a vitamin supplement, and you have to learn the language of vitamin supplements.
Yes.
You have to learn how to work with that co-manufacturer.
And the jargon within that industry.
And the jargon.
Because honestly, like I've walked into meetings before being ill-prepared, and like they're talking, I'm like, I have no idea what anybody is talking about. And it took me several weeks to get up to speed. And so exactly what you're saying, right? Like you have to understand how to talk to the manufacturer, speak their language, understand the jargon, right? Even things like dye lines, like what is that, right? Like what does that mean? What does the manufacturer need to hear from me to understand what is actually needed for my company?
Yeah. And thankfully for me, that stuff has always come, I don't want to say easily, but it's always been very intuitive. I can be in a situation and I can pick up on things very quickly, and I'm not going to say be an expert, but like I can be up to speed on jargon or terminology very quickly. And so as you learn more of those over the years, again, those are just, you keep putting these tools in your toolbox. And so as you progress through your career, your experience just gets deeper and deeper and deeper. Yeah. And so, you know, let's fast forward to 2015 when I joined KT Tape.
Okay.
Again, if you look at the reasons, it's interesting. Not that long ago, I was speaking with the guy that hired me, and we were reminiscing, and he said, yeah, I hired you because number one, you had experience with adhesive products that stuck to the body. Okay. Because it was nail art, adhesive nail art. And the product development, meaning the packaging, not just like carton packaging for like retail shelves, but like first like initial packaging. It could be tubes or pumps or bottles for creams or, plastic injection molded cases. Like, the amount of packaging I've worked on over the last 10 years has been substantial, meaning the variety of the types of packaging. Yeah. And so, how did I get into it? It starts off with that knack, and then you just keep feeding that beast, whether it's, younger years in school where you take every shop class you can get your hands on, right? And then as soon as you get into your career, you just find ways to keep, it sounds simple, but like just keep doing what you like. Yeah. Do what makes you happy and brings you fulfillment. Yeah. And if that's where you're learning and growing, just keep doing it. Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm mishearing this, but it sounds like do some of the things that aren't necessarily your job, right? Like find those opportunities to learn something new at work, right? So that you can build that toolbox of tools that's going to help you long term. Because, I don't know, I listen to some podcasters sometimes, and their advice is like, if they're not paying you to do it, right? Like if it's not your job, you shouldn't have to do it. And it's like, okay, like I can understand that from a perspective of not wanting to be taken advantage of, but from my experience, I feel like you're missing out on opportunities, right? Like sometimes it's the guy who it's not their job to go check on the production line, but they go do it anyways, right? Because they're interested in it and it's interesting to them and they learn a new skill. And then when a new job opens up somewhere, higher up in the company, now they understand more and they become, like you said, right? You just have the skills that are needed to perform that job, which covers a broader area than what you were doing initially. I mean, does that?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely correct.
Okay.
I've worked with too many people over the years. You get to a certain point, like maybe you get, a different job title, and their attitude is like, I'm beneath that now. That's not that's someone else's
That's
problem.
not my job anymore. That's somebody else's problem.
Well, it's really not. It should be all of our problem.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that you have to do it. It means maybe you can help find the person who does need to do it,
Yes.
right? Or whatever. There's always learning opportunities. I'm never too senior in anything I do to be above something or this is beneath me or whatever. Like that, to me, that's just a toxic mindset.
Yeah. And you miss out on opportunities to understand in a way that you can't if somebody's just explaining it to you.
Right.
Like if you,
Right.
like things that I've done in my career is I've gone out on the production line and I've worked a position, right, and not for a long time, maybe just an hour, but after that hour, I know more about that than that technician could have tried to explain to me over the course of a week because I actually took the time to spend doing that specific job.
Right.
And that kind of understanding is invaluable if you do want to advance your career over time.
Yeah, there's different management styles. Some people like to manage in silos, or they're just that person who I just want to look at spreadsheets and make decisions on spreadsheets.
Right.
My management style is called management by walking around. Like I want to go talk to the guy running the machine.
Yeah.
I want to talk to the people QAing the product. I want to see it. I want to observe it, right? Because then there's a ton of learnings. And even if it's things that aren't directly within my scope, I still want to know it and learn it.
Right.
Because I'm there to, I don't know anybody who's not working cross-functionally.
Yes.
And can say, hey, you know what? I noticed this out there. You might want to keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
At least know enough to know when something should be, addressed.
Right. Because, that might not be within your scope now, but it could be within your scope later.
Yes.
Or it could be, you might hire somebody who that's within their scope.
Yeah.
Right. So, you really have to be open to learnings, and learnings come from everywhere.
Yeah.
So you're spot on with that.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. So with product development, maybe you could help kind of the audience a little bit by defining that, because we've talked to industrial designers before, we've talked to entrepreneurs, and I have an understanding of what you mean when you say product development, right, from our previous conversations. But for an entrepreneur, how would you describe what it is that you do and your specific skill set that sets you apart from, say, like an industrial designer or an engineer?
So my first thoughts go to like what's called a stage gate or phase gate process, right? Where you start off with like, gate 0, which is like ideation.
Yeah.
And which I've always been a big contributor to that. And then, there's the stage 1, which is probably like, this is where you do your bases of interest. And there's, that's a whole process of like, is this something we actually want to do?
Yeah.
Then the question you answer at the end of that is, okay, do we want to do it? Yes. Now you have to develop it. So my personal definition and experience with product development is someone who takes that idea and turns it into the end product.
Yeah.
And it could be a software product, because you're developing a software product. I deal with CPG, consumer packaged goods. So I have to it's my job to say, okay, this is what we want to accomplish. How do we get through all of that and end up with a product on shelf that's packaged right? And so that's, it could be researching the materials, the manufacturing methods, the packaging types, the vendors you want to use. I mean, I even get involved if we go overseas to like audit vendors or qualify them. It could be a team of 2 or 3 people where you have one person from operations, one person from product, and one person from like regulatory.
Right.
And we're all there, but we're looking at that vendor through our particular lens.
Yes.
And you know what I'm saying? So product development, it kind of casts a wide net, but in the very end, it's my job to turn an idea into a product.
Yes. Yeah.
And in many projects, I have had to bring on an industrial designer or an engineer through a particular phase of the product to, give me, I need to end up with CAD files for this or DFM for that or whatever.
Yes.
And so I've managed industrial designers, I've managed engineers through relevant stages of projects, as just a component of the longer process.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing is effectively you have the vision for how to take it from ideation into a finished product, right? And even though you might have to bring in individuals to fulfill specific roles at specific times, right? Not necessarily because you couldn't, but because it's more efficient or you're working on different things, whatever that might be. And I think that's invaluable, because if you don't have that overarching vision, like sometimes that I see, I have a technical background in engineering, right? And so I talk to a lot of engineers, and engineers want to focus on the design, right? They want to focus on the mechanics, the performance, all the things that they're interested in, but they're not thinking about packaging. They're not thinking about regulatory compliance. They're not thinking about the industrial design aspect, right? How's it going to look? How's it going to feel in someone's hand? Or if they're, if it's a physical product, or how's it going to feel if I use this online? And they tend to view the development process from their speciality, right? So if they have a legal background, they view it from a legal perspective. If they have a technical background, they view it from a technical background. If they have a business background, they view it from a business background. And it sounds like what I'm hearing is that with a product development background, right, which is effectively, you have lots of different capabilities, you can see it beginning to end, all the different pieces, and help navigate that product through it to actually get it into somebody's hands.
Yeah, I would say one of my strengths is you have linear thinking, which is like this process starts here, and then you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this. But you could have 10 processes running in parallel.
Yes.
So the lateral thinking is, if we do something here or make a change here, how is it going to affect one of these dots over here?
Yes.
Right? And so one of my strengths over the years has been understanding, being able to step back and look at all of these different disciplines, whether it's packaging, patents, name them, and understanding how those things affect other things in those linear and lateral processes.
Yes, absolutely.
And again, that's just something I've built over time, which is with being involved in, even like legal, right? I have no legal background, but I've been heavily involved in, like, when we wanted to patent something, right? Artwork or the language or how to describe how it works. Like I've always been involved in working with the attorneys. And so what you do is you glean everything you can. So the next time you go through that process, back to like jargon and language, you're more astute. And so you just do it better the next time. You know what I mean?
Well, and you're aware of it for some of the other processes, right? So when you're doing something, you say, oh, this might affect the patent. Let me loop them into this conversation and let them talk about this.
Again, so that it's just this accumulative building of knowledge across multiple disciplines. And that's just speaking for me. That's how it's ended up for me. So, my definition of product developer might be a little different, but
I think it's a good definition, though. And it reminds me of why we encourage a lot of our, especially like startup companies, early licensees, students who are starting companies, to find a mentor, right? Somebody who's done something similar to what they've done before. Because if you're comparing your skill set now to your skill set when you were 20, right? It's night and day, right? To try to think of doing some of the things that you do now, right? Like, it's just common, normal, everyday type of thing. But doing it when you were 20, you just didn't have the context or the understanding to really pull some of those things together.
Absolutely.
And so if you're 20, right, or 14, 15, right, if you're in high school and you can find somebody who's done some of those things, it's not just the connections they can provide. It's literally their vision for how to navigate all of these things that you're not even aware they exist, right? You're thinking linearly, and they're thinking, okay, we've got these 20 processes that are running simultaneously.
Yeah.
So no, I think that's a invaluable thing that new entrepreneurs should keep in mind, right? It's not that you can't figure it out yourself, but definitely find somebody who has some of that expertise and can point you in the right direction.
Right. I think the biggest challenge is people, they not and this is not a critique, they don't know what they don't know.
Yes.
It's really as simple as that. There's so many pitfalls and gotchas out there that they just don't know about and can't even imagine happening. And so
it's kind of like the Dunning-Kruger effect a little bit, right? And you want to be on the far side of that curve, not on the left side of that curve. But you don't know, right, until you go through the middle.
Yeah.
Anyways. All right. Well, tell us a little bit about maybe one of your favorite products that you've worked on, if you can. I know sometimes there's NDAs and different things in place.
No, I mean, this is, I'll pick a product that I worked on at KT Tape.
Okay.
Back in 2016, there were products on the market, like trigger point massage products,
Okay.
that were like balls that could roll.
Mhm.
And then other brands started coming out with ones that had cold. You could put them in the freezer. They had like a glycol gel inside, and they
Okay.
would get really cold
Yeah.
for anti-inflammation trigger point. And so we said, hey, this is great. We want to be the first brand to come out with one that's dual modality, both hot and cold. You can
Okay.
you can choose either one,
Yeah.
or just room temperature,
Yeah.
like 3 different. And so we set out to do that, and that process took us over a year,
Mhm.
and we launched a product. That's one of my favorites. Is that product involved, between the product and packaging, involved close to 20 different materials,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
From, ABS, TPE, stainless steel.
Mhm.
I mean, there was, things that were thermoformed, things that were injected molded. I mean, it was just the variety of materials and manufacturing methods to create all of the elements that came together for that product
Yeah.
was complex.
Yes.
And I really kind of enjoyed the complex nature of that project. It was incredibly challenging,
Mhm.
and at times just incredibly frustrating,
I'm sure.
right? Setbacks and whatever, but I thrive in that environment,
Yeah.
right? Trying to figure things out, scrappy, resourceful. Okay, this is a dead end. Where do we go now, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it took us just over a year to develop that and launch it, and it was a fantastic product, right? Unfortunately, like, it was hard to market, and
Yeah.
you can have a great product. This is another thing for anyone listening. You can have a great product, but it doesn't mean that you're going to sell a ton of it.
Yes. Which can be incredibly frustrating.
Incredibly frustrating,
Yes.
right? And so, so as a product developer, sometimes you have to really divorce yourself from the idea that, like, hey, this is great, which it is,
Mhm.
but like, we're going to blow it up.
Right.
Right, because maybe the market size isn't there, maybe for all kinds of reasons, and you have to really also, in that same vein, you have to be willing to, like, give up on your own baby idea.
Yes.
Like, we have our ideas that are our babies, and we're very protective of them. You have to be willing to give up on some of those and move on
Yes.
and pivot.
Which again can be incredibly frustrating, right?
It can
Something
be
you
frustrating,
spend time and
but
energy.
it doesn't mean everything you've learned in that, or that a nugget of that idea is not going to be applied elsewhere later to
Right.
another product.
Yeah.
You're just kind of like putting it in the parking lot or the shelf.
Yeah.
And
And
saying,
it doesn't mean that it wouldn't become relevant at some point in the future.
Exactly,
Right? And so
exactly.
you take what you can from that project, you build out your toolbox just a little bit more, and you move on to the next thing.
Yeah, and you have to be open-minded to that.
Yes, absolutely. And I love what you were saying about the complexity of the product, because I assume that to the consumer it seemed pretty simple, right? It's like, oh yeah, I can just make it hot or cold, whatever I want, right? Like, the superficial appearance is pretty simple, but all of the detail that goes into the behind the scenes, I don't know, there's some beauty in that complexity sometimes, right?
Yeah, I agree. Like, the product itself, from the consumer-facing side, is relatively simple.
Yeah.
But the amount of work and the time it took to get that right is a lot of time, a lot of effort, and yeah, it was very, I would just say, very complex. But there's people who thrive in those with complexity because they like the challenge.
Well, it's so interesting,
And
right?
and it's interesting, and you're constantly learning. It just goes back to that, like, you're constantly discovering and learning, even in challenges.
Yes.
And so you have to. That's just a mindset that maybe I was blessed with.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
sure
you
it
kind
can
of
be
have to
learned
enjoy
and
that
taught.
pain a little bit.
Yeah,
right?
you kind of do. You have to understand that sometimes your greatest successes or learnings can come from very uncomfortable things.
Yes.
You have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah. That's a great way to say it.
So,
No.
yeah.
So for a new entrepreneur then, what advice might you give them? If they're like, hey, I've got an idea, I want to take this to market, I'm not sure where to start. What would be your advice from your experience?
Yeah, entrepreneurs, like, again, let's just talk through the lens of consumer products.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think it's like idea, product, and then customer. And I think more often it should be idea, customer, and then product.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Going back to like, you could have a great idea, but if people don't want it, they just don't want it.
Yes.
And so,
and that product market fit is invaluable, right?
yeah. And so you can have a great idea, but it kind of goes back to that stage gate process. Like there's early on, you have to figure out, like you have to, again, it's like one of the most important step ones in my mind is what's called the basis of interest study, which is a huge list I have of like, you know, what problem does this solve for the market? How is it differentiated from anything that's out there, right? All the way to down, is it manufacturable? Is it going to do well domestically versus internationally?
Yeah.
Like, what's the best sales model for this? Is it best D2C or is it best in retail? Like, there's this ginormous list of questions that you have to ask of yourself and of your product.
Right.
And at the very end, it's like the last question is, do we still like it?
Yes.
And that could kick some things out and say, you know what, for all these reasons, maybe this isn't the time.
Yeah.
Or maybe we don't have the resources or the technical know-how. But if you do like it, then that's when you move forward. And then you still want to do like a lot of like market study. You still want to use, there's tools out there that help you, you know, get data from people, you know, whether it's surveys or other things on the idea. And, you know, every now and then you get great feedback and you're still kind of taking a gamble and maybe it doesn't work, but
yeah.
you
always have to take some sort of gamble, right?
Yeah,
like the number of times that it's going to be 100% clear that you're going to succeed is almost zero, right?
No. Yeah, I was actually kind of advising a young company last night. They were picking my brain for like over an hour on developing a product. And they had not really done a lot of market study to see if people want it. It's their gut. They're in they're in this certain industry, so they kind of like know, and I trust them to know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we both agreed, like, you're taking a bit of a gamble here. You guys understand that it's a calculated gamble, but it's a gamble. And they were like, yeah, we get it.
Yeah.
You know, but some people, they don't know that. They just think, you know, they kind of drink too much of their own Kool-Aid, right? Hey, this is a killer idea. I'm going to make 10,000 units and we're going to blow it up.
Yeah.
And
they sell themselves too much.
And then
you
end up with like 9,000 units in your garage and you can't sell them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Having done that myself on several projects, like I know exactly what you're talking about.
And that's painful.
It's a painful lesson to learn, but
yeah.
The thing that stood out to me when you were talking was asking the right questions and asking them in the right order, right? Because if you ask them in the wrong order, you convince yourself early on that this is going to be incredibly successful, and then you deal with the pain later.
Right.
Versus asking them in the right order, right? And you deal with the pain early on, which is this really isn't going to be a viable product or project, and I need to pivot into something else.
Yeah,
but at least you save all of that time and effort and resources going into something that ultimately was never going to work.
Yeah, and I think it's different for like a startup where it's just maybe like a couple people, you know, have an idea versus like a brand,
right?
Where you're going to have like guardrails in place. You're going to have structures to ask the questions. You're going to have money to throw at surveys, and you know. But for startups, like it's just hard to know, and it's hard to spend money to try to know. And so, yeah, I mean, it's tough out there for startups.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and specifically with startups, there's a lot of hype right now around AI. So it's really fun to talk to somebody who's been in like the physical consumer product goods space. Where do you see innovation going the next 5 to 10, 15 years? Maybe specifically here in Utah or more broadly, if that's where your mind's at.
My gut tells me that it will be heavily somehow connected to AI.
Okay.
Now, how that happens for product development, I mean, you could maybe put in some prompts and say, this is the product we want to build. What are the best materials, right? It's, you know, instead of picking my brain, you might pick AI's brain.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
With that accumulative knowledge. I'm not sure how that's going to work. I have yet to work for a company that's really embraced AI.
Okay.
Not only because it's still fairly new, but we just haven't incorporated it in any of our processes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe other than some copywriting or, you know, very like kind of low end things, but not like big strategic.
I feel everybody's still really trying to figure out like exactly what the impact point needs to be for their specific business.
I just feel like over the next maybe five or 10 years, that is going to change the game for even people that do what I do in ways that right now I can't understand.
Right.
My gut just tells me that like, it's gonna have an impact. And when I say impact, I don't mean negative. I mean, it could enhance what I'm doing.
Right.
I could be the one using it, and I could still be doing it and directing it, right? Other than that, I mean, it's hard to like trend forecast or even second guess what's going to blow up or what's going to, like, what product types or industry types.
No, but I like that answer, because it's basically like AI will become instrumental in whatever the next phase of technology is going to be.
And in ways that I don't understand.
Yes.
I know that it will, but in ways that I don't understand yet.
Yes.
But I'm open-minded to embracing it where I need to.
Yeah.
And using it as I need to.
And I think that's the right mindset, right? Is to embrace the new tools. Because if you don't, right, if you, again, have that feeling that you need to reject things, or that you already know what you need to know, right? The only thing that's going to happen is you're going to pass up opportunities to improve and build out your, we keep talking about the toolbox, build out that toolbox even more than what you already have.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that fear AI, because, there's that side of the conversation, like, it's going to take all these jobs. But I think that's the wrong mindset to have. I think if people fear it, maybe a little bit of a critique here, maybe they're not creative or resourceful enough to understand how to leverage it. Yeah. And that's just an education thing. Right. It's, they can overcome,
and it's even just
that hurdle.
A lack of vision thing, right? Like it's not like you need to be educated in anything specifically. It's just you don't quite see yet how this is ultimately going to help you long term, right? You're only focused on some of the negative aspects that might be in the immediate future. Yeah. One of
the biggest things I would say to people who want to go into product development, especially like not just the development, but this ideation through the end product, is you have to have an ability to see around that corner. Yeah. And as best as you can, understand what's around that corner and get ahead of it or get to it fast first. And I would say AI is like that. You already know it's there. Yeah. Like you know it could be a powerful tool. Figure out how to use that tool. Yeah. The ones who figure it out first are going to be the ones who are ahead. Right. 10, 15 years from now. Exactly. Fantastic. Okay. Well, I think we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for coming in, Jeremy. Great. Really appreciate it. And we'll talk again soon. All right. Thank you. Yeah.